Welcome to the new Barbarians podcast. I'm Bill Mann. This is the third installment of the AI Agent Deep Dive series. In this podcast, two AI agents will discuss how to use LLMs to transform the investment process and increase productivity. These powerful AI tools are transforming how we analyze data, generate insights, and make investment decisions. LLMs are not just tireless financial analysts, but also incredibly efficient software engineers. We'll provide specific examples of how LLMs are changing day-to-day workflows for both fundamental and quant investors. I must point out how fast the technology is advancing. I used Google's NotebookLM to generate the discussion of a paper I published to SSRN in December. Almost 3 months later, I'm using brand new tools from multiple providers for deep research and agentic workflows, and I continue to document biases inherent in these models. In other words, it is time to write another paper. In the meantime, please take a listen and enjoy the 20-minute distillation of another 40-page paper. I'm certain they do a better job explaining my work than I can.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving headfirst into the world of high finance.
Okay.
Specifically how all this AI stuff, these large language models, are changing the game on Wall Street.
Right.
And we've got this really interesting guide to help us out. It's called the LLM Quant Revolution, from ChatGPT to Wall Street.
Catchy title.
Yeah, it is. And it brings up some really interesting points.
Like what?
Well, like, could we use something like ChatGPT, the thing everyone's been playing with? Could we use that to predict the stock market?
Interesting.
And are there already hedge funds secretly using this stuff to make millions?
No, that would be something.
Right. So to help us unpack all of this, we have an expert in the house today.
Happy to be here.
Now, you eat, sleep, and breathe this quantitative finance stuff right.
I do.
And you've even built AI-powered investment systems yourself.
That's right.
So can you give like a quick overview of why LLMs are suddenly the hottest topic in finance?
Well, it really comes down to the fact that they can process information just like we do. Okay.
But much, much faster.
Okay.
They can analyze tons of data, spot patterns and trends, and even write code.
Wow.
For complex financial models. So it's like having a team of analysts and programmers working for you 24/7.
So what you're saying is these LLMs could actually level the playing field for everyday investors like me.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the most exciting things about LLMs is the idea of democratization. So in the past, this kind of sophisticated analysis was reserved for big institutions.
Right, the ones with all the money.
Exactly. But now with these open source LLMs and cloud platforms, individuals can have access to the same tools.
That's amazing. But that guide mentions that to really get the most out of LLMs in finance, you need this multi-model approach.
That's right.
Can you break that down for us? Why is it so important?
Well, you see, no single LLM can do everything. Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses.
All right.
So this multi-model approach means combining different LLMs, each one specializing in a specific task. It's like building your own all-star team of AI.
Exactly. And the guide actually goes into detail about specific LLMs for each stage of the investment process.
Oh, wow.
From generating ideas all the way to actually executing trades. For example, BloombergGPT is really good for research because it's trained on Bloomberg's huge database of financial data.
Now, you mentioned BloombergGPT, and it's one of the LLMs highlighted in the guide.
Yeah.
What makes it so well suited for financial research? And are there any potential drawbacks investors should be aware of?
It's been trained on this massive data set of financial documents, news articles, market data, all that.
Oh, wow.
So it can go through tons of information and find insights that a human analyst might miss.
Okay.
But we have to remember that any LLM is only as good as the data it's trained on.
So it's still important to use our own judgment and not just blindly trust whatever these models spit out.
Exactly.
What would you say is the biggest misconception people have about using LLMs for investing?
I'd say it's the idea that it's a set it and forget it kind of thing. People get caught up in the hype and think LLMs can make all the decisions for them.
So like a robot advisor.
Sort of. But the reality is human oversight is still critical. These are powerful tools.
Sure.
But they're still tools. We need to understand their limitations and use them to enhance our own decision making.
So it's more about using LLMs to help us, not replace us entirely.
Exactly. Think of it as a partnership. We bring the experience and intuition. The LLM brings the speed and processing power.
I like that, a partnership.
and together we can make better decisions.
Now, you mentioned LLMs could outperform human investors.
Potentially.
But a lot of market movements are driven by human behavior.
True.
Which can be pretty unpredictable. How can an LLM account for something like that?
That's one of the biggest challenges in this whole field. LLMs can analyze historical data and identify trends, but they can't predict the future.
Sure.
Sudden changes in sentiment, unexpected events, even rumors and speculation. All of these things can influence the market in ways that are hard for any model to predict.
It's like the market has a mind of its own.
In a way, it does. And that's why human intuition and understanding of market psychology are still so important.
So we can't program emotions into these LLMs.
Not yet, anywhere.
So it sounds like we're still a long way from handing over the reins to AI completely.
Yeah, we are, but the potential is there.
Yeah.
The question is, how can we best leverage these technologies to make smarter decisions and navigate the ever-changing financial landscape?
So how would you recommend someone starts exploring this world of LLMs?
Well, a good first step is to familiarize yourself with the different types of LLMs that are out there.
Okay.
You mentioned ChatGPT earlier.
Right.
That's a great example of a general purpose LLM.
Oh, okay.
You can use it for a variety of tasks, including getting a better understanding of financial concepts.
So even just using something like ChatGPT to learn more about finance could be helpful.
Absolutely. Ask it to explain things you don't understand, summarize news articles, or even write code for basic analysis.
That sounds pretty user-friendly.
It is. And from there, you can start looking at more specialized LLMs for finance, like BloombergGPT.
So ChatGPT is like a good starting point.
Right.
For anyone who's maybe a little intimidated by all the technical stuff.
Exactly. The key is to start small, experiment a bit, and build up your knowledge and confidence.
So the learning curve might not be as steep as people think.
Not necessarily. The resources are out there, and a lot of them are free or very affordable.
Right.
The most important thing is to have that curiosity and willingness to learn.
That's what the deep dive is all about. So let's say someone's comfortable using a general LLM like ChatGPT.
Okay.
What's the next step in taking things to the next level?
That's where this multi-model approach we talked about comes in.
Right.
Remember how we said you need to combine different LLMs for different tasks?
Yeah.
Well, the guide actually has some very specific recommendations for each stage of the investing process.
Hey guys, if you got anything out of that last segment, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps us grow the podcast and bring you great content. Thanks for the support.
Okay, let's dive into that. What are some of the LLMs the guide highlights? And how can we start thinking about building our own AI-powered investment toolkit?
Sure. So for the ideation phase, where you're brainstorming new ideas, the guide suggests GPT-4 and Claude.
Okay.
They're really good at thinking outside the box, which can be valuable when you're looking for a fresh perspective.
So if you're feeling stuck in a rut, those are the LLMs to turn to.
That's right.
What about when it's time to do the actual research and dig into the data?
Well, we already talked about BloombergGPT, but the guide also recommends Finbert.
And what does Finbert do?
It's designed specifically for processing financial documents and extracting key insights.
Oh, that's cool.
Think of it like a research assistant that can read through earnings reports and market analyses much faster than you ever could.
So it can help us cut through all the noise and get to the important stuff.
Exactly. But once you have some potential investment ideas, how do you know if they're actually good?
Right. How do you test them out?
That's where backtesting comes in, and the guide recommends FinGPT for that.
What is FinGPT?
It's specifically designed to predict stock movements and test investment strategies. It can show you how your ideas would have performed in the past, which gives you a better sense of the risks and rewards.
So it's like running a simulation before you put any real money on the line.
That's a good way to put it.
That sounds incredibly helpful, especially for someone who's new to investing.
It can be.
Okay, so we've brainstormed with GPT-4 and Claude.
Yep.
Researched with BloombergGPT and Finbert. And backtested with FinGPT.
Right.
What's the next step in our AI-powered investment journey?
Well, once you have a promising strategy,
you
need to optimize it.
Right.
And that's where Llama 2 and FinMe come in. They are really good at portfolio optimization.
So taking into account things like my risk tolerance and my investment goals.
Exactly. They can create a well-balanced portfolio for you.
It sounds like they can help fine-tune our strategy.
Yep.
And make sure it aligns with our overall financial goals. What about the actual design of the strategy itself?
For that, the guide recommends Claude and BloombergGPT again.
Oh, okay.
Claude is great at creating robust frameworks. And BloombergGPT brings its financial knowledge to the table. So together, they can help you create a strategy that is sound and data-driven.
So they were like the masterminds behind the operation.
You could say that.
Making sure our investment strategy is solid and has the best chance of success. And then comes the moment of truth.
The actual trading.
Exactly. Which LLMs are trading floor heroes?
For execution modeling, the guide points to Ocarina and Gemini. They can help you optimize your trades to make sure you're getting the best prices and executing your strategy as efficiently as possible.
This is pretty incredible. We've gone from brainstorming ideas to executing trades.
I know, it's amazing.
All with the help of these incredible LLMs. But this journey has just begun.
There's so much more to talk about.
We have so much more to unpack.
Absolutely. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll look at the complexities of using these LLM-powered systems in the real world.
Okay.
And we'll also explore some real-world successes and failures, which I think you'll find really interesting.
Okay, sounds good. So we've been talking about building this amazing AI-powered investment toolkit.
Right.
But the guide also talks about some real-world examples where using LLMs for investing went really well.
And some not so well.
And some not so well.
Yeah.
Can you share any that really stood out to you?
Well, one that comes to mind is the author's own experience, where he missed out on a big trade because of a technical glitch.
Really?
Yeah, his multi-LLM setup actually crashed right before a major election.
Wow.
And he couldn't capitalize on what he called the Trump trade.
So even with all this advanced technology, things can still go wrong.
That's right.
It's a good reminder that we're still in the early stages of this whole LLM thing.
It is, and it shows how important it is to have a really robust system.
Especially when real money is involved.
Exactly. No room for error when millions of dollars are on the line.
You're right.
Yeah.
So it's not just about having a fancy AI model.
No.
It's about making sure that model can actually work in the real world.
That's the key. So when we talk about actually using these systems, one of the biggest challenges is making sure the LLM's output is accurate and reliable.
We touched on this earlier.
We did.
With the limitations of LLMs.
Right.
And their tendency to, make stuff up.
Yes, the hallucinations.
Right, hallucinations.
It's a bit creepy when you think about it.
It is a little creepy.
Yeah.
So how do we prevent our AI investment advisors from, going rogue?
Well, that's where this technique called retrieval augmented generation comes in, or RAG for short.
RAG. Okay. So RAG is like a fact checker.
Yeah, you could say that. A RAG system makes sure the LLM is only using verified data.
So you're basically giving the LLM a set of trusted resources.
Exactly.
Which makes the results more reliable.
That's right.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah, kinda.
But even with these safeguards, human oversight is still important, right?
Absolutely. Especially in a real-world setting.
We can't just let the machines run wild.
No, we need to monitor the system, validate the outputs, and be ready to step in if something goes wrong.
So it's a constant process of monitoring and adjusting.
It is.
What would you say are the most critical areas where human judgment is still absolutely essential?
Well, like you said earlier, human oversight is important at every stage, but I think it's particularly crucial in the ideation phase.
Okay.
Even though LLMs can generate creative investment ideas, human analysts still need to evaluate those ideas.
Sure.
Think about whether they're feasible, how they align with the overall goals, and they also need to use their knowledge of the market, current events, all that.
To make sure those ideas are actually relevant.
Right.
So the LLMs are kind of like the idea generators.
Yeah.
But humans are still the decision makers.
That's right.
What about the research phase? We talk about LLMs like BloombergGPT processing huge amounts of data.
Yes.
Does that mean human analysts are out of a job?
Not at all. LLMs can process the data quickly.
Right.
But human analysts are still needed to interpret the insights, identify red flags.
Oh, okay.
And use their market knowledge to validate the findings.
So they're asking those critical questions.
Exactly.
Like, does the data make sense?
Hey guys, if you got anything out of that last segment, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us grow the podcast and bring you great content. Thanks for the support.
Are there any external factors influencing the results?
Are there biases in the data?
All of that. So it's like the LLMs give us the pieces of the puzzle.
Right.
But humans are the ones putting it all together.
I like that analogy.
And when it comes to strategy design, Human expertise is even more important.
Okay.
LLMs can help us structure our strategies, backtest them, sure. But ultimately, it's the human investor who makes the final decisions.
How about?
Risk tolerance, asset allocation, investment philosophy.
Those are big decisions.
They are. And they require a level of understanding and judgment that LLMs just can't replicate.
So it's not about replacing humans with AI.
No.
It's about giving humans better tools to make better decisions.
Exactly. And we need to remember that even the most sophisticated system is only as good as the humans using it.
That's a really good point.
It is.
We can't just assume that because something is powered by AI, that it's automatically going to make us better investors.
We need to learn about these technologies.
Right.
Understand their strengths and limitations.
Yeah.
Develop the skills to use them effectively.
It's like any other tool. Used correctly, it can be incredibly powerful.
But used incorrectly,
it can backfire.
Exactly. So I think the main message here is we need a balanced approach. Finding the right balance between human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
And that balance seems to be changing so quickly.
It is.
We've been talking about these specific LLMs.
Right.
But this field is moving so fast.
It really is.
Some of these models are already being outdated.
That's right.
What does that mean for the future of finance?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think we're just at the beginning of this AI revolution.
And as these LLMs get even more sophisticated, they're going to continue to change how we invest,
how we analyze markets,
how we manage risk.
It's going to be fascinating to watch.
It is. But with all this power comes a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely.
How do we ensure that these powerful AI tools are used ethically?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that we need to be talking about more and more.
As AI becomes more integrated into our lives.
Right. We need to be thinking about the ethical implications.
Especially in finance.
We need to make sure these systems are fair and transparent.
And accountable.
Yes. And we need to be aware of potential biases in the data.
So we need to have some serious conversations about the role of AI.
Not just in finance.
But in all aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And these conversations need to happen now.
We can't wait and see what happens.
No, we need to be proactive.
And shape the future we want.
I completely agree.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Yes.
What's the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I'd say the most important thing is to understand that LLMs are incredibly powerful tools, but they're not a magic solution. They're tools that need to be used carefully. And ethically. And ultimately, it's up to us humans to decide how we want to use these tools.
To create a better financial future.
For ourselves and for the world.
That's a great point to end on. In the final part of our deep dive,
yeah,
we'll explore some of the big questions this guide raises about the future of AI in finance.
It's going to be interesting.
And we'll leave you with some things to think about as you continue exploring this amazing field. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about LLMs and their impact on Wall Street.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh yeah, we are.
As these AI models get even more advanced, what are some of the things we might see happen in the financial world?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me in the guide was the idea that these LLMs might actually be able to outperform human fund managers.
Wow.
I mean, if they can analyze markets, predict stock movements, and even come up with trading strategies, what role will humans even have in the future?
It's a question a lot of people are asking.
Definitely.
Are we heading towards a world where algorithms are making all the investment decisions?
It's definitely possible. Imagine AI systems that are constantly monitoring the markets, processing information in real time.
And making trades faster than any human ever could.
Exactly. That could completely change how the financial world works.
It's exciting, but also a little scary.
I know what you mean.
On the one hand, you could have increased efficiency, lower costs, maybe even better returns.
Right.
But then you have to wonder, what happens to the humans?
That's the big question. And that's why it's so important to talk about these things now.
While these technologies are still developing.
Exactly. We need to be thinking about the kind of future we want.
And how we can use AI to benefit everyone.
Not just a select few.
It's like we're standing at a crossroads.
And the decisions we make now will have a huge impact on what happens next.
So true. What are some of the things we should be thinking about?
Well, for example, how do we make sure this new AI-driven financial system is fair and transparent?
Right, and how do we prevent these systems from becoming biased?
Exactly. And how do we maintain human oversight? We can't just let the machines run wild.
These are big questions.
They are, and there aren't any easy answers.
But we need to start having these conversations now.
We do. We need to be proactive and shape the future we want.
I agree. This guy does a great job of making us think about these issues.
It does. It doesn't shy away from the potential risks.
But it also shows us the amazing opportunities.
That's what makes it so thought-provoking.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of LLMs on Wall Street, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I would say the most important takeaway is this. The future of finance is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play.
It's not just something that's happening to us, it's something we're all creating together.
That's right. Whether you're an investor, a financial professional, or just someone who's curious about technology, stay informed, get involved, and help shape the future you want to see.
That's a great message to end on. And I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of LLMs on Wall Street. It's been an incredible journey, and I hope our listeners feel inspired to continue exploring this amazing field. Thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive. Remember, the more we understand about the forces shaping our world, the better equipped we are to navigate the future. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one building the next big AI-powered investment system. Until next time, keep diving deep.